Welcome back, guys. Film Unfolded presents a crime action movie called Dumplings. So fasten your seatbelt because things are about to get worse. And if you love the video, then hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. So let's get started. The picture starts and we witness a lady who was going from China to Hong Kong. She had a lunchbox in hand as well. She opened every box and dumped the food except the final box as soon as she got home. In the box, there was a little dish resembling momos, which the lady eats after washing it. This meal is called Dumplings, and the title of this movie is likewise this. We also saw this lady whose name is May, although some people nickname her Aunt May since she is extremely elderly. But the unexpected part is that she looks exactly like a young girl. Now, why is she appearing younger? And how is this possible? Though the explanation is rather frightening, we shall know later. May not only creates dumplings for herself, but she was fairly renowned for creating them since she used to make and sell them to everyone, which are fresh and extremely nice to eat. And these dumplings were the secret of her beauty and appearing younger. Those dumplings have a certain quality. There is some such component. Mrs. Lee, a lady, arrives here. She used to be a movie star, but now she has progressed from her job because she married a very wealthy businessman and is living her life under his name, simply since there is neither love between them nor any kind of connection like husband and wife. She married him primarily for money so that she might have a nice position, but now she is witnessing this status sliding out of her clutches. Mrs. Lee's spouse is turning away from her as she ages. Spending much of his time with young, gorgeous ladies, he develops connections with them. This makes Mrs. Lee extremely sad. She feels that I am losing everything, but if I lose my youth and beauty too, then I would be left with nothing. That is why today she came to May's, since she also got to know from some place that the dumplings that she cooks had magic in them. Such properties are discovered in the dumplings that anyone who eats them begins looking youthful again. Such modifications arise in the physique that a person's age begins appearing less. In a manner, she becomes a human creature. She could stop or reduce age and make a person so beautiful that anyone would be drawn towards her, but she is not going to believe anything heard from anyone. So she asked me to give her some proof of this. So I say, "What do you think my age is?" In response, Mrs. Lee says around 30. To this I say, "Look, my age is more than 30 years. You are not even able to guess my age. So what bigger proof do you need than this? I had such a special thing in my dumplings, which has such magic that no other thing can give beauty and youth like that. I myself am so young and beautiful just by eating dumplings. No cream or lotion can give you such a good result. Then even if you get treatment for this, even surgery cannot give you such a great result. Because aging is a process of the human body. A person passes through every age, and at one time he has to become old too. So to reduce the increasing age and look younger, this process cannot be done from outside. Rather, it can be done from within, which I accomplish via dumplings, for which Mrs. Lee accepts. And now I make my meal the dumpling and offer it in front of her. At first, Mrs. Lee was hesitant to do it, but as she thinks about its effects, she ultimately eats it. She feels that this is the final choice for me. Who knows, it may turn out to be advantageous for me tomorrow. She accomplished a miracle, and thereafter, like this, every day she comes to my home and begins eating these dumplings. Now she also receives a sense of the fact that the elements in it are the flesh of little animals, but it does not fit in this object. She did not know anything else. She was just worried about the outcome, and that too very quickly, and as I was asserting, the dumplings looked to be the answer to her issue. Then she realized that these days my husband is traveling on trips too often, and Mrs. Lee knew very well who he would be with on the travels. But even after knowing everything, she was going through this anguish and was living a life of despair, but she was not able to manage it further. I can't do anything. If I ask my husband more about this, he will give her a check of a huge amount, but he can do only this much for his wife. He could not give her anything more than this. She was becoming a victim of neither love nor his attention. Now earlier, Mrs. Lee did not like dishes like dumplings, but due to compulsion, today she had to eat them. Not only this, but now she also keeps giving me tips to prepare good dumplings. Make them like this. Add this thing in it because this will make the dumplings more tasty. Now some days pass like this. Yes, I could see a change in Mrs. Lee. Her skin had started looking young, but Mrs. Lee wanted faster results than this. That's why she says to me that, please do something so that I get better results overnight. To which I say, yes, I promise it will happen. Now when Mrs. Lee left from here, a woman comes to May's house who had brought her young daughter with her, whose name was Kate. From their talk, we come to know that earlier there used to be a very good lady doctor. She used to handle at least 10 cases a day, although now she has left this job. But still, that woman brought her daughter Kate to me because this girl Kate is 15 years old, but she is going to become a mother, and the one who has done wrong with her is none other than her own father. And now when she is pregnant, her mother is wandering around with her because she wants either this child to be born or it to be aborted. Now I check Kate, and she finds out that Kate's kid is of a 6-year-old mother. That is why it was extremely tough for me to look into this issue. So she rejects, stating that I cannot do anything for this. She advises that you should contact the black market and you should know about a hospital from where your daughter's child will either be born or aborted because such things are also done in that hospital, and I am still in touch with the same hospital. But I was not a doctor there. Rather, she used to steal the flesh of small children from there. That is, the special ingredient in her dumplings is the flesh of the child. That is, this was her secret. Mrs. Lee was there. She knew that my husband was having an affair with a hotel staff member. She used to come to his room every night and remain there. Mrs. Lee could not bear this situation longer, so she summons me to her home and attempts to explain that, see, I have no life apart from my house and my husband. I wish to extend my family. I adore having children, but I don't see why this isn't doable. Now, witnessing her disappointment, I determined that whatever occurs, I should aid her in any situation. On the other hand, Kate's health was also failing. It began to look like she was pregnant. Her mother is also concerned about Kate, so I resolved to assist her too. The very next day, she summons Kate and her parents to her home and also gives birth to Kate's kid. That too without any intoxicating drugs. Kate endured a lot and her kid came out, at which a weird grin appeared on May's face since, after seeing this child, she feels that this is what I need. She desired meat with the assistance of which she could restore Mrs. Lee's youth, since the kid was totally healthy. First, the meat she used to add to her dumpling was also the meat of a small child, which she used to steal from the hospital. But all those children were of a short duration, but this child was of 5 mothers, so it has more nutrition and more strength than them, due to which Mrs. Lee will become young overnight as she dreams. This will work like magic. She worries that if I give Kate a numbing or intoxicating drug, then all the virtues in it will be gone. That is why I now preserve the flesh of this youngster in my fridge. Then the following day, when Mrs. Lee returned to her residence, I tossed out the mother of this kid to prepare dumplings. Now for a long time, Mrs. Lee was wondering what she put in her dumpling. Today she could not wait to know this, and she rushed to the kitchen fast, where I was ready to grind the meat finely. Seeing this, Mrs. Lee felt quite terrified, that she instantly raced away from there. Now she felt like puking simply by seeing it, and even considering that I had been eating this for so long. But then she thinks about her husband herself, adding that my attractiveness and appearances are most essential for me. As my age is growing, all these things are likewise fading away. If it continues like this, then one day my spouse will surely leave away from me. So under these conditions, if this is the answer to the issue for me, then it is correct. So she reasoned that if the baby pork dumplings kept me youthful and lovely, then I would not quit eating them. She stopped herself and once again returned to my place, where I cook dumplings by adding the same meat, and offers it to her to consume. Now thinking about such amazing outcomes, Mrs. Lee not only eats those dumplings, but also relishes each mouthful. I was also observing her and was assured that these dumplings would absolutely create for you what you desire and offer you a new happy life. Very soon you will start witnessing a change in yourself. Now Mrs. Lee was feeling really happy after listening to her and eating these new varieties of dumplings. And then, after a few days, Changes really began flowing in Mrs. Lee. My words began coming true because suddenly Mrs. Lee was looking so gorgeous and youthful that her husband continued staring at her and would not take his eyes off her, and also congratulated her, saying, "You are looking really adorable." This made Mrs. Lee extremely pleased, and both of them enjoyed a fantastic day together after so long. Now Mrs. Lee feels that my life has been joyful once again, since her husband now pays his whole attention towards her, quitting his business and spending time with her, which was a great thing for her. But it is also true that every miracle has side effects too. That indicates adverse impacts and improper outcomes. Mrs. Lee prepares a party at her home, where all the friends and family have arrived. They also appreciate Mrs. Lee's attractiveness, but as she arrives and sits in the center of everyone, they start detecting the scent of fish, which was emanating from Mrs. Lee's body. Now, owing to this, Mrs. Lee has to suffer a lot of shame, and she leaves the party and locks herself in the bathroom and takes a nice bath. She wonders, how can she do this to me? She should have notified me about these negative effects earlier, so she calls me and tells me everything. In answer, I remark that I personally did not know about these adverse effects. Nothing like this has ever occurred to me. It may be that such a thing has entered your body for the first time. That is why this has occurred. It will be okay by tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. You should not worry too much. Mrs. Lee also relaxes now with her remarks, but she was ignorant of the fact that her husband standing outside has heard their whole chat. She had previously realized that my wife was not eating anything unusual. She is taking some medication, some plant, or some intoxicating item. Now, after listening to May, he himself finds out information about her, and the very next day he reaches out to see her. Then May also feeds him dumplings. Lee got to know that May is a cannibal, and because of cannibalism, she is so youthful and lovely, and she is doing all this with others too, by feeding them dumplings. Though she is 65 years old, she appears like a girl, but Lee, who was such a person previously, did not care that May is a cannibal. It only mattered to him that she is youthful and lovely. At first sight, he began to like May, and thus he developed a connection with her. Now Mrs. Lee was already afraid because she knew how May could use her and bring her back. And now, by trapping her in her love, she forms a relationship with him because she did not want to lose this opportunity, after which both of them spend time together, and both of them completely start ignoring Mrs. Lee. What more did May want? The rich man had fallen in love with her, and Lee was also interested in beauty, and Mrs. Lee could not leave May so easily. That is why she wanted to stay with May in her house, because now her body had become used to those dumplings. Now if she stops eating them, then her youth and beauty will all end, because she was already facing this problem. Marks were appearing on her body, red spots were coming, and she was not even able to sleep. She went to the make and demanded dumplings. But I was not ready to listen to her. The woman whose child I had delivered was in so much pain that she died because I had not done the operation properly. Kate suffered so much pain that she did not have the courage, and if she had, she survived. That is why she died. After the death of her daughter, her mother was like a mad yogi, and she killed her husband, who was responsible for her daughter's death and who had done wrong. The neighbors informed the police about this. Then the police came and arrested Kate's mother, and when she was questioned, she said he took my name too. But before the police could arrest him, I had already packed my things and fled from there. Now I was rescued, but Mrs. Lee was absolutely convinced. She recognized that without those dumplings, I would not be able to exist. If I continue living, my youth and beauty will all be gone. After I go, she must order those dumplings. She finds a way out. She discovers the same hotel personnel with whom Lee had a connection. Furthermore, she finds out that the girl's going to be a mother. She is also 5 months pregnant. Because Lee desired a kid, he struck a bargain with the girl that if she gave birth to a child for him, he would pay her a great sum. So now Mrs. Lee goes and requests the hotel workers for her kid. She adds, "I want the child of this 5 mother only." She adds, "How much money my husband Lee has promised to give you, I will give you double the amount." She intended to kill 2 people with 1 stone. If I acquire this kid, then when this girl will not provide a child to Lee, he will leave her, and this thorn in my way will also vanish. And nevertheless, he was extremely hoping that this girl would be slain at that period itself. And if I acquire that youngster, then with his cooperation, I will be able to murder two people. Can maintain my youthful beauty, for which the girl agreed, and Mrs. Lee takes her to the lady doctor and gets this child born just like I had without any intoxicating medicine, because she also wanted this child to be completely healthy. And it also happens, according to her thinking, the girl gets killed during this process, and now as soon as she saves her, she brings her, then keeps her in a chopper to grind it, after which she will eat it. Which means that in the end, like Mrs. Lee became a murderer in the pursuit of becoming beautiful, now she does not need anyone nor any other process, because in exchange for money she will get a child forever after eating, which she will always remain beautiful and young, which was her wish, to always remain beautiful and young and get the love of her husband, which had now become possible, and from now on her husband will not look at anyone, but will only be attached to his wife. But the way behind this is very dangerous, and with this, the story also ends here. So friends, I hope you enjoyed the tale of Dumplings. That's all for now in today's movie, but we will undoubtedly meet again, and that too with another new, exciting subject. But until then, thanks.